King stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His scaled hands gripped the metal rail so hard that his knuckles turned white. The communication device in his other hand buzzed with another urgent message, but he could not bring himself to answer it. 3 days had passed since the battle at Moon. 3 days since his daughter's ship had exploded in a ball of fire and metal. 3 days since Princess had vanished into the cold darkness of space. The king's advisor general approached carefully. His footsteps echoed on the metal floor of the bridge. "Your Majesty," he said in a quiet voice, "the search teams have returned from the asteroid field." Did not turn around. He kept staring at the distant moon where his daughter had died. "Tell me," he said. They found pieces of the flagship scattered across 3 sectors. The ship was completely destroyed. There were no survivors, my king. No escape pods, no life signs. Paused. "Princess is gone." The words hit like a physical blow. He had known this was coming. Deep in his heart, he had known since the first reports came in. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that hurt beyond description. Had been more than his daughter. She had been the best military commander in the Empire. At only 30 cycles old, she had already won 12 major battles against the Collective. The soldiers called her the Golden Scale because of her bright yellow markings and her ability to turn any fight into a victory. "The troops are asking about her," continued. "Word is spreading through the fleet. Morale is dropping fast." Finally turned to face his general. His eyes, usually bright blue, looked dim and tired. "What is the current battle situation?" "Bad," admitted. "They are pushing forward on all fronts. Without Princess' tactical genius, our commanders are struggling to hold the line. We have lost 3 more systems in the past day alone." The king walked to the tactical display in the center of the bridge. The holographic map showed the current war zone. Red dots marked positions, while blue dots showed forces. There was much more red than blue, and the red was spreading. "The No, she is dead," said, studying the map. "They are pressing their advantage." "Yes, Your Majesty. Their attacks are becoming bolder. They are no longer afraid of her counter-strategies." Touched the spot on the map where Moon floated. Such a small place to lose such an important person. The battle there had been desperate. They had attacked with 5 full battle fleets, trying to break through to the home systems. Had taken her squadron to stop them, even though she was badly outnumbered. According to the reports, she had actually been winning. Her ships had destroyed 2 fleets and damaged a 3rd. Then something had gone wrong. They had used some kind of new weapon. A massive energy blast had torn through's flagship while she was leading the final attack. "Show me the battle recordings again," ordered. Hesitated. "Your Majesty, you have watched them many times already." "Show them to me." The tactical display changed to show the final moments of the battle. Watched his daughter's ship, a beautiful vessel shaped like a flying blade, dance between enemy fire. He saw her destroy ship after ship with precise attacks. Then came the moment he dreaded. The dreadnought fired its main weapon. The beam struck ship directly. For a brief moment, the entire vessel glowed white-hot. Then it exploded. "The blast was so powerful that it vaporized most of the ship," explained, even though he had said this many times before. "What little debris remained was scattered across the asteroid field. Our recovery teams searched every piece. There was nothing left large enough to contain a survivor." Closed his eyes. When was young, she used to climb onto his lap and ask him to tell her stories about the great warriors of the past. She would listen with wide eyes as he spoke of heroes who fought against impossible odds. Now she had become one of those heroes herself. But heroes in stories usually survived their adventures. Real heroes sometimes did not. "Your Majesty," another voice called from across the bridge. It was Commander, the communications officer. "Urgent message from the 2nd Fleet." "What now?" asked. "They have broken through at Vortex Station. Admiral is requesting immediate reinforcements." Looked at the map again. Vortex Station was a key supply depot. If it fell, they would lose their ability to supply the outer defense lines. How many ships does have? 43 combat vessels, Your Majesty. The intelligence estimates over 200. Felt a cold knot form in his stomach. These were exactly the kind of impossible odds that had been so good at overcoming. She would have found a way to use the enemy's numbers against them. She would have turned their strength into weakness through clever tactics and perfect timing. But was gone. Send the Fourth Fleet to reinforce, ordered, and tell Admiral to prepare the home defense fleet for possible withdrawal to the inner systems. Yes, Your Majesty. As the bridge crew hurried to carry out his orders, returned to staring out the viewport. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, among the asteroids and debris, his daughter's body was floating in the cold void. He would never see her smile again, never hear her laugh at his old jokes, never watch her brilliant mind solve another impossible military problem. The Empire was dying with her. Without genius, they were just another failing civilization, slowly being consumed by a stronger enemy. The golden scale had been their hope, their future, their star. Now that star had gone dark, and feared that the darkness would swallow them all. Wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the readings on his scanner. The asteroid he was mining contained more rare metals than he had seen in months. It was almost too good to be true, which made him suspicious. In his 5 years working the outer rim mining stations, had learned that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. The mining platform floated next to the large asteroid, its mechanical arms slowly cutting into the rock. Lived alone on the small station, extracting valuable materials to sell to trading ships. It was lonely work, but it paid well, and he liked the peace and quiet. That peace had been broken 3 days ago by the biggest space battle he had ever seen. Flashes of light had filled the sky as alien ships fought each other near the moon called. Did not know much about the war, except that 2 alien races were trying to kill each other. Humans were too small and weak to get involved in such things. They stayed on the edges of space, mining and trading, trying not to attract attention. After the battle ended, pieces of destroyed ships had rained down across the asteroid field. Most of it was junk, but some pieces contained useful technology that could salvage. He had been collecting the debris for 3 days, finding some interesting alien equipment. The scanner beeped, showing something unusual deep inside the asteroid. The reading looked different from normal metal deposits. It was shaped wrong, too regular to be natural rock. Frowned and adjusted his equipment to get a better look. What the hell is that? He muttered to himself. The object was buried about 50 meters into the asteroid. It was oval-shaped and made of some kind of metal alloy. Most importantly, it was giving off a weak energy signature. That meant it was still powered, which was impossible if it was just debris. Suited up and took his cutting tools outside the station. The work was slow and dangerous. One wrong move with the laser cutter could cause a cave-in that would bury him with whatever he was trying to find. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution. After 4 hours of careful digging, finally exposed the object. It was definitely artificial, some kind of escape pod or emergency shelter. The metal was badly damaged and scorched, as if it had been through an explosion. But the most shocking thing was the small window on one side. Through the window, could see something moving. His heart started beating faster. There was something alive inside the pod. The shape was wrong for a human, too big, too tall, with what looked like scales instead of skin. This was definitely one of the aliens from the space battle. Faced a choice. He could report this to the mining company, who would probably sell the alien to whoever paid the most money, or he could contact the human colonial government, who would want to study it. Both options would probably result in the alien dying or spending the rest of its life as a prisoner. The third option was to help. Looked at his scanner readings more carefully. The pod's power was almost gone. Life support systems were failing. Whatever was inside would die soon if he did not do something. "Damn it," said to no one. He had never been good at making the smart choice. He carefully extracted the pod from the asteroid using his mining equipment. Getting it into his station was even harder. The pod was heavy and awkward, and had to modify his airlock to fit it inside. Once the pod was safely in his workshop, began examining it more closely. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built, but the basic principles were the same. Life support, power systems, emergency medical equipment. He could understand the purpose even if he could not read the alien writing. The alien inside was clearly in bad shape. Through the window, could see that it was unconscious and bleeding. Strange blue liquid leaked from several wounds. Its breathing was shallow and irregular. Spent 2 hours figuring out how to open the pod without killing its occupant. When he finally got it open, the smell hit him first, a sharp, metallic odor mixed with something like burning plastic. The alien was even bigger than he had thought, probably 7 feet tall, with dark green scales that had bright yellow patterns. It wore some kind of military armor that was badly damaged. More importantly, it was dying. Had some medical training from his time in the human merchant marine. The alien's biology was different, but the basics were the same. It had lost a lot of blood and had several serious injuries. Its body temperature was dropping and its pulse was weak. Working quickly, set up an emergency medical station using equipment from his mining platform. He had medical supplies for treating human injuries, but he had to improvise for an alien patient. The blood loss was the most urgent problem, so he used emergency foam to seal the wounds. For body temperature, he rigged heating elements from his life support system. The hardest part was figuring out what the alien could safely breathe. Its atmosphere had different chemical levels than human air. Had to adjust his air recycling system to create the right mixture of gases. It took 3 tries before the alien's breathing improved. While he worked, wondered what he was doing. This alien might be from the race that was losing the war, or it might be from the winning side. Either way, helping it could make him an enemy of very powerful people. But as he looked at the unconscious alien, bleeding and helpless, he could not bring himself to care about politics. After 6 hours of non-stop work, the alien's condition finally stabilized. Its breathing was stronger, the wounds had stopped bleeding, and its body temperature was back to normal levels. Collapsed in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. As he sat there catching his breath, the alien's eyes suddenly opened. They were bright blue, like looking into deep ocean water. The alien tried to sit up, then winced in pain and lay back down. Reached for the communication device he had salvaged from alien debris. It was supposed to translate between different languages. He had never tried using it with a living alien before. "Hello," he said carefully, "can you understand me?" The alien stared at him for a long moment. When it finally spoke, its voice was deep and musical, like wind blowing through metal chimes. "You are not," it said in accented but clear human words. "What species are you?" "Human," replied. "My name is, I found your escape pod in an asteroid. You were badly injured." The alien's eyes widened slightly. "Human, I have never heard of your species." It paused, then asked, "Why did you help me?" Shrugged. "You were dying. Seemed like the right thing to do." The alien stared at him, as if he had said something impossible to believe. Princess tried to sit up again, moving more carefully this time. The human had done good work treating her injuries, but her body still ached from the explosion that had destroyed her ship. She looked around the small room where she was lying and felt surprised by what she saw. The human's medical equipment was crude but effective. He had combined technology from at least 3 different alien races to create a working treatment system. A shield generator powered a medical scanner, while human computers controlled the mixture of gases she was breathing. It should not have worked, but somehow it did. How long was I unconscious? She asked. Checked a device on his wrist. About 18 hours. I was starting to worry you might not wake up. 18 hours. His heart sank as she realized what that meant. If she had been unconscious that long, the forces would have moved far past this area. She was now trapped behind enemy lines with no way to contact her own people. I need to send a message to my fleet, she said, trying to stand up. Whoa, easy there, moved to help steady her. You lost a lot of blood, you should rest for a while longer. You do not understand. I must contact my people immediately. They think I am dead. I hate to break it to you, but your people are long gone. They have taken over this entire sector. I've been monitoring their communications for the past day. They're hunting for survivors from the battle. Felt her blood turn cold. They control this area now. Yeah, and they're being pretty thorough about it. 3 patrol ships have already swept through this asteroid field. I've had to keep my power levels low to avoid detection. This was a disaster. Was the heir to the throne and the commander of their most elite military unit. If they captured her, they would use her for propaganda purposes before eventually killing her. Worse, her father would probably pay any price to get her back, even if it meant losing the war. How far are we from space? She asked. Consulted his navigation computer. About 40 light years. That's assuming you can get past all the fleets between here and there. 40 light years through enemy territory. Without a ship, without weapons, without support. It was impossible. Even for someone with her training, it was impossible. I can see you're thinking this looks pretty hopeless, said, but maybe we can work something out. Wait. Look, I know I'm just a human, and we're not exactly known for our military prowess. But I've been living on the edge of this war zone for 5 years. I know how to avoid patrols and how to move through dangerous territory without being detected. Studied the human more carefully. He was much smaller than her, probably weighing less than half what she did. His species looked fragile, with soft skin and no natural weapons. According to her knowledge of galactic races, humans were a minor species that had barely achieved space travel. They survived by staying out of the way of more powerful civilizations. But this human had saved her life using nothing but salvaged equipment and creative thinking. That suggested there might be more to his species than she had originally thought. What are you proposing? She asked. I help you get back to your people. In exchange, you tell me about the war and maybe help me understand some of this alien technology I've been collecting. It was not much of a choice. She could stay here and eventually be captured by or she could trust this strange little human who had already saved her life once. Very well, but I warn you, the journey will be extremely dangerous. Grinned, dangerous is my specialty. Over the next few hours, learned that had not been exaggerating. His mining station was a masterpiece of improvised engineering. He had taken broken pieces of technology from dozens of different sources and somehow made them work together. His computer systems used processors, power cores, and human software all running in harmony. How did you learn to do this? She asked, watching him modify a communication device. Trial and error mostly, plus a lot of reading technical manuals that I probably wasn't supposed to have access to. He paused in his work. Your people build good equipment, by the way, very reliable. And the equipment? Powerful but inefficient. They waste a lot of energy, but if you can work around that, their power systems are incredibly durable. Was beginning to realize that she had seriously underestimated this human. His approach to technology was completely different from anything she had been taught. Where engineers followed precise specifications and technicians used brute force solutions, seemed to improvise constantly, finding new ways to make incompatible systems work together. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from Scanner. "Uh-oh," he said, "we've got company." On the scanner display, could see 3 patrol ships approaching their position. They were still several hours away, but they were definitely heading in their direction. "They must have detected the energy signature from your escape pod," said. "We need to get out of here." "Do you have a ship?" "Sort of. It's more of a cargo hauler with a few modifications." Was already moving around his station, collecting equipment. "It's not fast, but it's stealthy." "We cannot outrun patrol ships in a cargo hauler." "Who said anything about running?" asked with that same grin. "I've got a better idea." What happened next convinced that humans were far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy realized. Loaded several mining charges with explosive compounds and attached them to pieces of debris from ship. Then he used his mining equipment to scatter the charges throughout the asteroid field, making them look like natural rock formations. "When the ships get close, they'll scan for life signs," he explained. "But the metal in these asteroids will interfere with their sensors. They'll have to come in close to get accurate readings. And then we blow up the asteroids they're hiding behind and use the confusion to take out their ships." It was an insane plan. The patrol ships were heavily armed military vessels, was proposing to destroy them using mining equipment and improvised explosives. But somehow it worked. When the ships entered the asteroid field, they spread out to search more effectively, waited until they were positioned exactly where he wanted them, then triggered his trap. The explosion of the mining charges caused a chain reaction that destroyed 2 patrol ships outright and severely damaged the third. The remaining ship tried to escape, but had prepared for that too. Using his mining platform's tractor beam, he grabbed a large asteroid and hurled it at the fleeing ship. The impact crippled its engines, and the ship crashed into another asteroid. In less than 10 minutes, had destroyed an entire patrol using nothing but mining equipment and clever tactics. "How did you know that would work?" asked, staring at the wreckage. Shrugged. "I didn't, but it seemed worth a try." For the first time since her ship was destroyed, smiled. Perhaps this journey would not be impossible after all. The journey through territory became an education for Princess in the art of human warfare. Over the next 12 days, showed her tactics that no military academy had ever taught, strategies that would have been considered dishonorable by her people's standards, but which worked with terrifying effectiveness. Their first major test came when they encountered a checkpoint at a fuel depot. The enemy had set up scanners that could detect any ship trying to pass through the system. Military protocols demanded either fighting through with superior firepower or finding another route that might add weeks to their journey. Chose a third option that left speechless. "We're going to pretend to be space junk," he announced, powering down all their systems except life support. "Space junk. They are collecting debris from the battle for analysis. We'll just drift in with the rest of the wreckage." Began coating their ship with metallic paint and attaching pieces of actual debris to the hull. "The trick is to look valuable enough that they'll want to collect us, but damaged enough that they won't scan too carefully." It should not have worked. They were experienced warriors with advanced sensors, but understood something that was only beginning to grasp. Even the most sophisticated technology could be fooled if you understood how it worked. He had studied sensor systems by examining captured equipment. Their scanners looked for specific patterns, energy signatures, refined metals, organized structures. By disguising their ship as a piece of valuable wreckage, made the sensors see exactly what they were programmed to look for, while hiding what they were actually carrying. The plan worked perfectly. A salvage ship picked them up and stored them in its cargo bay along with dozens of other pieces of debris, while the crew was distracted with processing their haul and slipped out of their ship and sabotaged the salvage vessel's engines. They escaped in the confusion when the ship lost power and began drifting toward the system's star. "How did you know they would not scan us more carefully?" asked as they flew away. "Because they're lazy," replied. "All soldiers are lazy when they're doing routine work. They have been collecting debris for days. They've gotten into a pattern grab anything that looks valuable, sort it out later. I just gave them what they expected to see. This became a recurring theme during their journey. Did not fight them with superior technology or overwhelming force. Instead, he studied their behavior and found ways to use their own strengths against them. When they needed to cross a system heavily patrolled by hunters, did not try to sneak past them. He created a fake distress signal that drew the patrol ships away from their route, then used the confusion to slip through the empty corridor. When their ship's life support began failing, did not look for replacement parts. Instead, he captured microscopic organisms from a passing comet and used them to create a biological air recycling system that worked better than their original equipment. Most impressive of all was how dealt with their food situation. Species required a specific protein that was not found in human food supplies. Without it, she would slowly weaken and die. Spent 2 days analyzing her biology, then figured out how to synthesize the protein using bacteria colonies he grew in empty fuel tanks. "This is impossible," said, watching the bacteria produce exactly the nutrients she needed. "You cannot understand biology well enough to do this." "I don't understand it completely," admitted, "but I understand chemistry and biology well enough to figure out what your body needs and how to provide it. Sometimes you don't need to know everything, you just need to know enough." This philosophy seemed to guide everything did. He did not try to become an expert in alien technology. Instead, he learned just enough about each system to make it work for his purposes. His solutions were often crude and improvised, but they were effective in ways that elegant engineering sometimes was not. Began to understand why humans had survived in a galaxy full of more powerful species. They did not try to compete on the same terms as their neighbors. Instead, they found entirely different ways to solve problems, approaches that more advanced civilizations never considered because they were too focused on conventional methods. The most striking example came when they encountered a bioscanner that could detect any living creature within range. This was technology that even they had trouble defeating. Their ships were designed to block such scans, but its cargo hauler had no such protection. "We're going to mask our life signs," announced. "How? We do not have bioshielding equipment." Began collecting samples from a bacterial colony he had been growing in their waste recycling system. "We don't need equipment. We just need to confuse the scanner about what it's reading." He spread the bacteria throughout their ship, creating colonies that produced complex biochemical signatures. When the scanner examined them, it detected life signs, but they appeared to be simple microorganisms rather than intelligent beings. The bacteria created so much biological noise that the scanner could not distinguish and from the background. "You are using living creatures as camouflage," said in amazement. "Everything is a tool if you use it right," replied. But perhaps the most impressive demonstration of human adaptability came when himself was injured. A piece of shrapnel from an exploded mine had cut deep into his leg, severing several important blood vessels. By all rights, he should have died from blood loss within minutes. Instead, calmly applied a tourniquet, injected himself with stimulants, and continued working for another 14 hours while they evaded pursuit. Watched in fascination as the human pushed his body far beyond what should have been possible. He worked through pain that would have incapacitated most species, functioning effectively while losing blood and running on nothing but determination. "Your species is remarkably resilient," she observed as she finally convinced him to let her treat his wound properly. "We have to be," said, wincing as she cleaned the injury. "Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill us. Every predator was stronger than us. Every environment was hostile. We survived by being too stubborn to die and too creative to be caught." During those long days of travel, learned that humans fought like no other species in the galaxy. They did not rely on honor or tradition or superior technology. They relied on adaptability, creativity, and an almost supernatural ability to find solutions where none should exist. They did not fight to win glory or claim territory. They fought to survive, and that desperation bred innovations that more civilized species could never match. By the time they finally reached the edge of space, had formed a new understanding of humanity. These small, seemingly weak creatures were perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their weapons or their numbers, but because of their minds. They could turn anything into a weapon, any environment into an advantage, any problem into an opportunity. Most importantly, they never gave up, no matter how impossible the situation appeared. "We made it," said as they crossed into safe territory. "Your people's border patrol should pick us up soon." Looked at the human who had guided her through impossible odds and brought her safely home. Her father needed to know about this species. The entire galaxy needed to know. Humans were not the minor, insignificant race that everyone believed them to be. They were a force that could change the course of the war itself. King was reviewing casualty reports when the communication officer's voice cut through the bridge chatter like a blade. "Your Majesty, urgent message from Border Patrol Station 7. They report a small vessel requesting permission to dock. The pilot claims to be Princess." The tablet fell from his hands, clattering on the metal floor. Around him, the bridge crew stopped what they were doing and stared in shocked silence. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship's engines. "That is impossible," General whispered. "We saw her ship destroyed." "Verify the identification codes immediately," ordered, his voice shaking slightly. He had buried his daughter in his heart 3 weeks ago. The hope that suddenly flared to life was almost too painful to bear. "The codes check out, Your Majesty. Voice pattern analysis confirms it is Princess. She is alive and requesting immediate transport to your flagship." Had to sit down. His legs felt weak and his hearts were beating so fast he could barely breathe. "Bring her here immediately. Fastest ship available. Full military escort." "Yes, Your Majesty. However, there is one unusual detail. The princess is not alone. She has a companion from an unknown species calling itself human." 2 hours later, stood in the docking bay of his flagship, surrounded by his senior officers and elite guards. He had changed into his ceremonial robes and tried to compose himself, but his hands still trembled slightly. When the transport ship's door opened and stepped out, alive and whole, he nearly collapsed with relief. She was thinner than before, and there were new scars on her scales, but she moved with the same confident grace he remembered. Behind her came something he had never seen before, a small, bipedal creature with soft-looking skin and no visible natural weapons. "Father," said, approaching with formal military bearing despite the tears in her eyes, "I request permission to return to duty." Could not maintain the royal dignity any longer. He stepped forward and embraced his daughter, holding her tight against his chest. Around them, the assembled officers broke into cheers that echoed throughout the docking bay. "I thought you were dead," whispered. "We all thought you were dead." "I nearly was, Father. If not for, I would have died in that asteroid field." Looked over at the strange alien who had somehow brought his daughter back from the dead. The creature was much smaller than any sentient species he knew about, but it stood with quiet confidence despite being surrounded by dozens of armed soldiers. "This is," continued, "he is human. He saved my life and helped me cross 40 light-years of enemy territory to return home." Studied the human more carefully. It looked fragile, almost delicate compared to the robust builds of galactic species. But there was something in its eyes, an intelligence and alertness that suggested hidden depths. "You have my eternal gratitude," said formally. "Name any reward and it shall be yours." Bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty, but I don't need a reward. Getting home safely was payment enough." This surprised. In his experience, beings who performed great services for royalty always demanded compensation. Then what do you wish? Actually, I was hoping to sit in on one of your military strategy meetings. I'm curious about how you fight this war. General stepped forward, his expression skeptical. Your Majesty, surely military discussions are not appropriate for an outsider. Is not an outsider, said firmly. He is the reason I am standing here. More importantly, he has shown me tactical approaches that could revolutionize how we fight was intrigued. His daughter was the finest military mind in the empire. If she thought this human had something valuable to offer, it was worth investigating. An hour later, the senior military staff gathered in the strategy room, stood before the holographic display showing the current war situation, looking remarkably calm for someone addressing the leadership of an interstellar empire. The first thing I notice, began, studying the tactical display, is that you're fighting the war on these terms. You're using the same strategies they are, just trying to do them better. That is how wars are fought, Admiral said stiffly. Fleet engagements, territorial control, supply line management. Maybe for you, replied. But humans fight differently. We fight like our lives depend on it because they usually do. He manipulated the holographic display, highlighting several positions. Look at their deployment pattern. They're concentrating their forces to hold key systems, which makes sense from a traditional military perspective. But it also creates vulnerabilities. What kind of vulnerabilities? Asked. Began sketching out alternative attack patterns on the display. Their supply lines are stretched thin because they're trying to hold too much territory. Their communication networks are centralized, which makes them efficient but fragile. Most importantly, they're fighting like they've already won, which makes them predictable. Over the next hour, outlined strategies that no officer had ever considered. Asymmetric warfare tactics that would disrupt supply lines rather than attacking their fleets directly. Communication jamming that would isolate enemy forces from their command structure. Psychological warfare designed to exploit pack mentalities. These methods are, Admiral paused, searching for the right word, unconventional. They're effective, interjected. I have seen defeat superior forces using exactly these tactics. But where is the honor in such fighting? General asked. What glory is there in sabotage and deception? Looked at him with genuine confusion. Honor, glory, I thought you were fighting for survival. The silence that followed was profound. Realized that this human had identified something fundamental about how his people approached warfare. They fought with honor and tradition, following rules that had been established over thousands of years. But they were not interested in honor. They fought to win by any means necessary. Explain what you mean, said carefully. Humans don't fight for glory, replied. We fight because something is trying to kill us and we want to live. When your survival is at stake, you use every advantage you can find. You turn everything into a weapon, your environment, your enemy's expectations, their own strengths. You never fight fair because fair fights get you killed. He gestured to the tactical display. They are stronger than you, right? They have more ships, more soldiers, better technology, so you can't beat them in a fair fight. The solution is simple, don't fight fair. Over the following days, worked with military planners to develop new strategies based on human warfare principles. The results were remarkable. Small forces began conducting raids that crippled supply convoys. Communication networks were disrupted by attacks no one expected. Enemy fleets found themselves isolated and vulnerable when their support systems failed. But perhaps most importantly, showed them how to think differently about the war itself. Instead of trying to match strength with greater strength, they began looking for ways to turn that strength into weakness. You see, explained to her father as they watched brief another group of officers, humans have spent their entire existence as the underdog. They evolved on a world where everything was stronger, faster, and more dangerous than they were. They survived by becoming the most adaptable and creative species in the galaxy. Nodded slowly, He was beginning to understand why his daughter had been so impressed by this small alien. "And you believe an alliance with humanity would benefit us?" "I believe an alliance with humanity would change everything, Father. They don't just think outside the box, they don't even acknowledge that the box exists." That evening made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. He sent an official diplomatic message to the human government, requesting a formal alliance between the Empire and humanity. The message was simple but historic. The Empire recognizes that humanity possesses unique strategic capabilities that could prove decisive in our conflict with the collective. We request immediate negotiations for a mutual defense pact and military cooperation agreement. Standing beside him as he recorded the message, smiled. "You know, humans have been waiting for an invitation to this war for a long time. We just needed someone to ask nicely. And in return for our alliance, what would humanity require?" "Equal partnership," replied without hesitation. "Not as junior partners or hired soldiers, but as equals. Humans don't like being told what to do, but we're great at figuring out how to help." Looked at this remarkable being who had brought his daughter home and opened his eyes to an entirely new way of thinking about warfare. "I believe that can be arranged." 3 months later, the first joint human operations began. The war that had seemed hopeless suddenly became winnable. The who had been confident of victory found themselves facing an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered before. Princess served as the first ambassador to Earth, with as her guide to understanding humanity. Together, they forged an alliance that would echo through galactic history. The day a lost princess came home with a human and changed the fate of civilizations. The golden scale had returned, and she had brought with her the most dangerous allies the galaxy had ever seen.